my feeling about what you are doing in general is about thinking out of the box. Is it right? Visiting this series of exhibition, it's my feeling.
I think it's probably accurate. I think it's probably true. And it's maybe not a coincidence that we think about a box as a kind of shape or as a kind of container. And I think that these identities, the identities of the participants, their way of understanding the world is quite difficult to fit into a container. So in that sense, I think it is knowledge or ideas that come outside the box. They bleed from the box in a way, yeah.
And also because you not only speak about a formal architecture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you decided when you accepted this project, what is your goal? What is your aim? And what is your dream about what will happen with this Biennial?
Do you know, when I first started writing fiction, my agent said to me, never think about the person who's going to read you. The minute you start to think about what they think, you will lose your own voice. And in a way, I think with this Biennale, it was the same. I tried not to think too hard about the future because I wanted to have clarity in what I...
Not about the future, despite the title.
Despite the title, not about the future reception.
Okay.
So not to think about what I hoped it would change or what impact I wanted it to have, because then I felt I would be putting pressure on myself to design the exhibition or the curatorial theme in a way to respond to a particular goal. But several words have stayed with me all the way through, and they are words like open, generous, hopeful, hybrid. They are kind of touchstones for the way I think we have approached the work. And I very much hope at the end of this process that that's what people will be. Open, hopeful, hybrid, in a way that they maybe were not when they came.
But your agent spoke about your own voice. So what is your own voice? Not in literature, of course, but in architecture.
I think it's a hybrid voice. You know, it's a voice that moves between categories. Back to the box. It's a voice that speaks, I think, several languages about architecture. You know, for me, words are as real as spaces.
Exactly. You know what? I wanted to ask you the question about, are words more important than building for you?
I think they have different importance. It's not that I don't want to answer the question, but the relationship I have with words is different to the relationship I have with space. For me, words came before space, and also the act of reading made me imagine worlds. I mean, growing up in West Africa, one of the only routes or access that I had to the world outside was through books. So when I would read about other places, I would have to imagine them in my own head. That kind of act of translating a series of words into an image is for me very much part of what architects do. So I often say that I could not have been a writer if I hadn't been an architect, and I couldn't be an architect if I hadn't been a writer. The two are almost interchangeable for me.
Yeah, but being an architect without building, is it being an architect?
I think it is, yeah. I think architects build ideas, I think they build context, I think they build confidence, I think they build knowledge. I think the gap for me between the profession of architecture and the discipline is a very broad gap.
So are you building a new kind of architecture?
No, I think I'm giving space or shining light on something that's always been there. I think this relationship between words and things and images and material it's old. Yeah. I don't think I'm inventing anything. No.
You are not inventing anything in this Biennale?
No. I think I'm shining a light on something, but I think it's always been there.
Yeah, like Africa.
Yeah, it's always been there. The creativity and the imagination that people see here, that are, you know, people say they're surprised by, it's always been there.
And what can we, which is in general, expect about Africa?
From this Biennale?
No, we speak about future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we speak about Africa. So if we mix the two words, what can we expect?
You know, we're the world's youngest continent, so the majority of Africans have the majority of their lives in front of them. So that gives you a certain attitude towards the future because you have more of it than you have of the past. But at the same time, we're the world's oldest continent, so we have quite a complex relationship between
But why
us.
oldest?
We all came out of Africa at a kind of anthropological level.
Mm.
So this combination of deep time and, I guess, deep future can be quite schizophrenic. It can be quite unsettling. I think many of the insecurities and vulnerabilities and fragilities that we see in Africa come from this inability to straddle these two perceptions of time. Am I hopeful? Yes, because I see the raw material that comes out of our continent. But at the same time, we have the world's oldest leadership. The gap between our leaders and our demographic is sometimes 3 generations. So that has to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you speak about the future, but you speak a lot about the past, or the artists, the architect you have chosen, about colonization, decolonization.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think we will still think for a long time about this subject?
I think it will take as long as it takes. You know, it's a deep and often traumatic experience. Often it's described in very simple terms, very binary terms, good, bad, you know, oppressor, oppressed. I think it's a much more complex relationship than that. But I also know that if we don't address it fully, properly, it will stay like a wound. My father was a doctor, he was a surgeon, and he used to say to me that when he was operating and he came across an infection, his job as a surgeon was to cut until he came to clean blood. I think I feel the same way about this subject, that you have to come to the clean idea, otherwise it just stays, it's a contamination.
Yes. So you speak a lot about your father and your mother?
I was brought up by my father.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Which is quite rare.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so the idea is all this surgery world is familiar to you.
Very, yeah.
Ah, that's interesting. And you did not want to become a doctor?
No. Never. Not in the slightest.
And so you speak about Africa, but there's not one Africa. There's
No,
plenty
there are
of Africas.
Many, yeah.
Isn't that a bit also caricatural?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think one of the traps, if you like, of being African is that you are never more African than when you are outside Africa. When you are inside Africa, you are just who you are.
Mm.
But this is an exhibition that takes place primarily in the global north, primarily to a global north audience. And the veil of Africa sits between us and the rest of the world. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. It's a shorthand. But I'm also hopeful that the range of expression in this exhibition also helps people to understand that Africa is as diverse as anywhere else. It's in some ways more diverse. And to speak about Africa is a kind of fallacy.
But now everyone speaks about Africa only.
Yeah.
Not about the countries in Africa, not about the tribes in Africa.
Well, we speak about countries, we speak about regions, we're very clear in our descriptions, but this is the shorthand of someone else. And in a way, I think you can't be both inside and outside history. You can't see something from the outside at the same time you're inside it. I feel the same way about the construct of Africa. Sometimes it's useful, even for us. Sometimes it's ridiculous. Yeah.
So, just if someone, an architect, is coming to visit the exhibition, how do you think he will understand what's going on here?
I can't speak for that, but I can say that seduction is a very powerful tool to seduce somebody into seeing something different. We don't often talk about seduction in that way.
Yes.
It usually has a kind of sexual connotation. But I'm not afraid of the fact that a lot of the work here is seductive, because I think it's beauty and joy are often, and love are ways to come into a subject that you think you are very estranged from. So in some senses, this has been an attempt to seduce an audience into seeing something more.
That's why you have invited a lot of artists too?
I don't really see the distinction, you know, if people are working in art in a way that is spatial and material and social to me, they have every much as right to take part in an architecture biennale as somebody who's building a building, yes.
No, but I think about Siesta Gate or Sami Baluji, who are officially artists, right? So you see them like architects?
Yeah, I mean, I think the term architect is protected in law. You know, you can't call yourself an architect unless you're legally an architect.
Uh-huh.
But fortunately, the term architecture doesn't have any such legal protection. So I see them as practitioners. I mean, that's partly why I chose that term.
And this morning you spoke also not about seduction, but about love.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the room for love in this Biennale?
I think it's the basis of most of this, you know, love for oneself, love for one's community, love for one's environment, love for one's story. I mean, to me, that's the very strong thread that runs through most of this, the love for your craft.
Yeah, but in this case of the Biennale, you spoke about love.
Yeah, that's what I mean. All of those things in this case, I mean in this Biennale.
Do you think that men dare to use the word love as much as women?
No.
That's
no,
interesting,
no,
right?
No.
About your speech, that was for me the most surprising thing, that you speak about love.
Yeah. I think love is often assumed to be less rational, less controllable. There's something slightly mystic about it. You know, the process of falling in love, even the word falling, it implies a kind of loss of control. But even in my fiction, I was very interested in love as a way to know the other.
And so what is the next step for love and architecture?
For architects to fall in love. No idea.
Ok, merci.
Merci à vous.